Hey, welcome. You know, our world is just this incredible, complicated puzzle, right? From how a tiny light bulb works to the crazy dance of life in a single drop of water, there are mysteries literally everywhere. But here's the cool part. We have this amazing tool to figure it all out. And that tool is science. And I'm not talking about boring facts from a textbook. No. It's a whole way of thinking, a method for asking the right questions to get some mind-blowing answers. So let's kick things off with a question that I bet you've probably wondered about at some point.
Okay, picture this, a simple string of lights, maybe some holiday decorations. Ever notice how sometimes they're super bright and other times they're just kind of sad and dim? What's up with that? It seems like such a small thing, right? But it's actually the perfect little puzzle to get us started on thinking like a real scientist.
All right, so let's look at two different ways you could wire those lights up. On one side, you've got what's called a series circuit, and on the other, a parallel circuit. Now, you might not see all the tiny details from here, but here's the thing. Science gives us the power to predict, to know, that the lights in that parallel circuit are going to shine way brighter. And it's not magic. It's all about understanding the basic rules of how electricity works. And to get a grip on those rules, well, you need the right kind of toolkit, a mental toolkit.
So, what exactly is in this scientist's toolkit? You might be thinking of, lab coats, beakers, fancy microscopes. But honestly, the most powerful tools aren't things you can hold. They're a specific way of thinking. It's this mindset that lets scientists explore the great unknown and make sense of the world, one super careful experiment at a time.
Okay, tool number one, the manipulated variable. This is basically the star of the show in any experiment. It's the one thing and only one thing that you deliberately decide to change just to see what happens. So for example, if we're testing how stable this block model is, our manipulated variable could be its height. We're the ones in control of this piece of the puzzle.
But here's the catch. For tests to be fair, you have to keep everything else exactly the same. We call these the constant variables. I mean, think about it. If you're testing how fast something falls, you wouldn't suddenly crank up a fan in the middle of the experiment, would you? Of course not. You'd keep things like the base of the model or the table it's on totally consistent. The key takeaway here, the absolute golden rule, is you only change one thing at a time.
All right, let's put it all together. Every single good experiment really boils down to these three key ingredients. You've got your manipulated variable, that's the thing you change. Then you've got your responding variable. That's what you measure to see the effect. Like maybe it's the time it takes for that model to topple over. And finally, you have all your constant variables, everything you work so hard to keep the same to make sure it's a fair fight. Get these three down and boom, you're officially thinking like a scientist.
Okay, so we've got our mental toolkit packed and ready. Now, let's actually use it to go exploring. And we're going to explore a world that is literally all around us, on us, and in us, but is completely invisible. Yep, we're diving into the amazing hidden world of microorganisms, or as you probably know them, microbes. So this invisible world, it is absolutely jam-packed with life. And we can basically sort it all into 5 main groups. You've got fungi, protozoa, algae, bacteria, and viruses. Each one of these is its own fascinating universe, and they are everywhere, in the air, in our water, even having a party inside our own bodies. Let's zoom in a little and say hello to a few of them. First up, fungi. And you've definitely met these guys before. Think about that fuzzy green stuff that shows up on a loaf of bread you, forgot about in the back of the pantry. Yep, that's fungi. Next, we've got protozoa. These are tiny, single-celled creatures, kind of like this amoeba here. You'll often find them just swimming around in ponds and puddles looking for their next meal.
And then we have viruses. These things are the absolute smallest of all the microbes. They're so small they can't even live on their own. They have to invade a host, like us, to make more of themselves, and that's usually why they can make us feel so sick.
Now, it's super easy to hear microbes and just think germs, right? But the reality is so much more complicated. These little guys have two totally different sides to them. On the one hand, they're like our essential partners in crime. They help us make amazing food like yogurt and bread, and they're even used to create life-saving medicines. But yeah, on the other hand, some of them are the bad guys that spoil our food or cause some pretty nasty diseases. So they're a huge part of our world, for better and for worse. Okay, we've looked at the invisible world all around us. Now let's take that scientific lens and point it inward. Because science doesn't just help us figure out the world out there, it's also the only way we can really understand the most complicated and amazing machine on the planet, our own bodies.
And what's more fundamental to understand than how new life is created? It is just this incredible, perfectly timed biological journey.
I mean, it all starts with two tiny specialized cells, sperm from the testes and an ovum from the ovaries. When these two meet up in the fallopian tube, that's called fertilization. And bam, you have a single cell with all the instructions for a brand new person. This little embryo then makes its way to the uterus, where it grows and develops for about 9 months until a baby is born. It's just an absolutely mind-blowing process when you think about it.
All right, so we've talked about the basic tools for an experiment. We've met the invisible microbes, and we've even looked at the beginnings of human life. So now, let's pull the camera way, way back. Let's zoom all the way out. Because here's the thing, no living creature, not a single one, exists all by itself. We are all part of this huge, tangled, beautiful web of life, where every single thread is connected to everything else.
Yeah, no species is an island. Life is all about how we interact with each other, and there's a cool scientific word for that, symbiosis. This table breaks down the 3 main types. First, you've got mutualism. That's a total win-win, where both sides get something good out of the deal, kind of like a brave little bird that cleans a crocodile's teeth. Then there's commensalism. That's where one guy benefits and the other one honestly couldn't care less. Think of a remora fish hitching a ride on a shark. And finally, there's parasitism, which is not so great for one party. That's when one benefits by harming the other, like a tick on a poor cat. These relationships are literally what shape and define entire ecosystems.
But hey, it's not always about cooperating and getting along. A huge part of life is also about competition. Animals, plants, all living things are in this constant struggle for the same limited stuff: food, water, a safe place to live. And that competition, it is a super powerful force that totally shapes how the natural world works.
So why does all this matter? Why should we care about variables and microbes in this whole web of life? Well, understanding these connections isn't just for a test or a textbook. It actually leads us to a really, really important mission. We have to use what we know to protect the incredibly delicate balance of our home, planet Earth.
Because that delicate web of life, it's fragile. And right now, it's seriously under threat. I mean, sure, natural disasters have always been part of the picture, but today, a lot of the biggest dangers are coming from us, from human activities. We're destroying habitats to build things, we're hunting animals illegally until there are almost none left, and we're poisoning entire ecosystems with pollution. Our actions have very real, very serious consequences.
And those consequences are, well, they're severe. Some species, like the famous dodo bird, are already extinct. That means they are gone, forever. There is no bringing them back. Then you have threatened species, like the Malayan tiger or the panda. Their numbers are dangerously low, and they're right on the edge of disappearing too. And that difference right there between extinct and threatened, that's our window. That's our chance to do something about it.
So what can we actually do? The good news is science gives us a roadmap. We can do things like reforestation, literally planting new forests to rebuild habitats. We can support conservation centers that work to protect these animals. And as individuals, we can make choices, like boycotting products that are made from threatened species. And as a whole society, we can push for and enforce strong laws that protect the amazing biodiversity of our planet.
You know, we started this whole thing off with a simple question about light bulbs. And look where we've ended up, thinking about our role in protecting the entire planet. That, right there, is the incredible power of having a scientific toolkit. It lets you see the world in a new way to understand the hidden connections between the tiniest microbe and the biggest ecosystem. So the real question isn't what science can do anymore. The real question is, now that you're armed with this knowledge, what will you discover and what will you protect?